listener production.
Hi, Sacha Barbour Gatt with you. Welcome to The Briefing. Just before we start, a trigger warning. This episode discusses mental health and suicide. If that's not for you, no worries. We'll see you next episode. 2024 has been a challenging year for a lot of people. We've had distressing overseas conflicts, the cost of living crisis has rolled on, there's been a contentious and often toxic election happening in the US. The list goes on. And that doesn't take into account the tough stuff that goes on in our own everyday lives that doesn't make the news. Losing a job, breaking up with someone, money woes, dealing with anxiety or depression. As we continue to get better about speaking up when we're having a hard time with our mental health, services like Lifeline are often at the coalface of responding to people in a crisis. More than 110,000 calls for help have been made to the helpline since January, with money worries dominating conversations, while October 7th, 2024 was the busiest day of the year. So what is it like to actually pick up the phone and dial 13 11 14? Well, today we are speaking with someone who's made that decision and been through it. His name's Michael, and he decided to call Lifeline almost 10 years ago when he was in a crisis. Michael, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Tell me about the day that you called Lifeline. What led you to pick up the phone?
I was going through some deep relationship issues, if I can put it that way. Just went through a breakup. And I didn't realize what a hole that had kind of left in me. I had some other issues that had affected me previously in life. And I was just at a crossroads. I really thought about just switching the light off. So for some reason, there was a part of me that thought maybe I should just hang on. I knew about Lifeline because they do a lot of advertising, a lot of marketing. And so it was like, well, what the heck? Just call these guys. What have I got to lose?
Did you feel like you were in like a crisis state, like you were almost at your wit's end, that there were, potential, suicide ideations or thinking of hurting yourself? Or was it more that you'd kind of gotten to this point where you felt like you needed to reach out to someone and just chat in general?
I'd say both. I was in a pretty dark state. I was in the point of planning, at the point of planning, how would I go about ending my life? Of course, I had a lot of feelings. I wanted to talk about them beforehand, but the way I was raised, country New South Wales, you're a tradie, you don't typically talk about feelings like this. So it was more of a case of you just hold them inside. Obviously, that got too much. So Lifeline was primarily to stop me from doing something that would end my life. But as I later found out, it was also a really good way to let the emotions out and start to make sense of what I was feeling.
What had you heard about the service? You said that you were aware of them through advertising, but what was your did you have a preconceived idea of who would be on the other end of the line or what the service could offer you?
I didn't really know what I was going in for. I just knew that someone would answer, and I guess I was just hoping there'd be a positive outcome. I could talk to them and share things. It was a pretty vulnerable experience because I was never one to open up deeply about how I was feeling. So I don't know if I had an expectation as such. I think it was just hoping that maybe I can let this out and maybe things will get better.
What was it you felt you needed when you made the call? Did you have a hope or a plan, or was it just, I'm going to try this because I'm at my wit's end?
Oh, absolutely the latter. I don't think I had any sort of, plan of conversation or anything like that. It was a case of, here, I'm a mess. Please accept me as this mess, and maybe you can help me deal with it.
Okay, so tell us about the person then who was on the other end of the line when you made that phone call. What were they like? How did they make you feel? And how did that phone call play out?
I think that's an interesting point you raised. If you asked me what was said, there's no way I could remember. But the memory I have is the feeling of no judgment. It was a feeling of I could be listened to. What I said and what I felt actually mattered. And that was kind of fresh to me because I wasn't used to that sort of validation. They were so calm in their tone. I never felt that I'm an idiot because that's typically of how you typically how you feel. I feel a bit stupid. Why have I got these feelings? There was none of that. It was like, let it out. I'm not judged at all. I'm listened to. Wow, I'm sorry you're going through that. That sounds really heavy. And for me, that was like, wow. And there's the waterworks were on after that. Just very calm, very gentle. And I never felt time pressure. I never felt like, look, you've got 15 minutes. You better hurry up and get this over with. It was a case of just let it all out. And I Yeah, I honestly think I could have stayed in there for at least half an hour to an hour. I don't recall. It was a lot going on, but it was certainly a safe place.
Do you think they were focused on strategies? Because this is something I'm curious about. I've never personally called Lifeline, but I work in the media and we put Lifeline trigger warnings on lots of different types of stories that can be upsetting or triggering to people. And I have thought, what's that like when you make the call and you tell them whatever is on your mind, whatever you feel like you need help with? Are they then trying to kind of go, okay, well, how about we work on these strategies together? Or is it a sounding board, or is it a little bit of both and they kind of try and help you take that next step once they've listened to you?
I think a little bit of both is certainly the case. The main thing is getting the emotion off your chest. I was just talking to someone earlier. You often feel like your brain is this bird's nest of fishing line and it's just this chaos. It's a case of getting that out there, having someone listen, which in itself is starting to unravel it, and then a conversation where you're trying to make sense of it. That then allows you to be able to see things clearly. And then they are able to offer some suggestions and some advice on how to take the next step forward. Again, I don't remember the exact words of that conversation, but I certainly felt afterwards that I can breathe again. I'm not this plane going down in flames. I've got a parachute now. And I guess that led me to begin pursuing education around mental health. Certainly opened the door for me to later on accept therapy and start to go through that. So I definitely think both, in answer to your question, get the feelings out there, listen without judgment, and then be able to start to make sense of everything.
Do you think that phone call changed your life?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be here now. I can guarantee that. I wouldn't be here now. And again, like mental health becomes such a big part of my life, and I try and have meaningful discussions now because I remember what I went through. I remember the sensation of not being able to talk or not being sure how to talk about things. Lifeline was the key that opened the door to this whole new way of looking at how we feel, how we interact with others, how we're navigating life. I think COVID really highlighted that for a lot of people, but obviously this happened before then. I think it certainly helped me be more empathetic. Certainly helped me see value in my own life, even at times now. I'm not living a perfect life where I'm free from stress and chaos. We're all facing these things, but it certainly helped me begin to navigate life. So I think Lifeline's such an awesome way to open the door to mental health, to be able to look at who we are and feel happy, if I can use that phrase, accept who we are and begin to move forward through the crisis that we might be facing.
I'm curious your perspective on this next question in terms of you grew up in country New South Wales, you'd worked in construction, you didn't feel like you could talk about your mental health to, I'm guessing, family or friends or kind of anyone in your circle. How important is something then like Lifeline, which exists in this sphere that they don't need to know who you are or where you're from or what you're doing, they're just there to listen to you? How important is that for particularly men who might feel the same way you did all those years ago?
The anonymity is actually quite helpful. If you ask me who I spoke to, I'd have no idea. I don't know who it is, but there's sometimes a great deal of comfort in not knowing who you're talking to. You're knowing that you're talking to someone who can deal with it and is qualified to have those conversations. But, small country town, you know everyone. You can't really let things out so easily. That's family, friends, whoever. Being able to talk to someone you don't really know on Lifeline, that's a big help, because it's like, well, they don't know me. They're never going to come after me. They're not going to tell my story with someone I know. So it certainly goes a long way. That breaks the barrier right down. And they can't see you. So you feel very safe. I think it's a very effective way to let those feelings out, to talk. And that's what makes it even more so less of a judgmental environment. Not that it ever is, but you just don't ever feel that sensation that this person could come and find me and, I'm exposed amongst my community or the people I work with.
I'm curious as well then, because you say it started a journey for you and it wasn't just one call and, oh, everything's great, thank you so much, Lifeline. It opened your mind and opened your heart to new ways to approach your mental health and to look at getting further assistance. Did that change then how you were talking to your friends, how you were talking to your family, your colleagues? Like, do you feel that it has had that impact where you go, I need to be better in my own circle because I'm sure there's people around me that are struggling too?
Absolutely. You'll probably be hard-pressed to have a conversation with me now where I don't bring up some aspect of emotional wellness or mental health well-being. Everyone I speak to, whether they be close family, friends, whoever, my colleagues, the impact of that is it's always interesting because you're beginning to change yourself and the other person you're speaking to, they're not at that point themselves. So you kind of expect a bit of resistance at times. But having said that, I've had people start opening up to me and I'm like, what have I done that's so different? And what I've done that's different is purely just be empathetic and let people know that it's okay to be having a bad day. I've got guys that ring me up at night. Something's on their mind, something's on their chest they want to get off. And it's awesome because now our relationships and friendships are so much closer. There's so much more depth to them than previously.
Michael, again, thank you for sharing your story with us today, for being so open and vulnerable. And I think especially hearing your message for blokes, I suppose, I'd like to give blokes a friendly nudge that, you know, chatting to your mates and chatting to your family or your co-workers isn't weak. And I think you're a really great example of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sacha. And thanks for having me on the podcast today.
That was Michael sharing his story with us there. And a timely reminder, Lifeline is there for you if you need it. You can call them on 13 11 14. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That is it for now. Before you go though, if you think you know someone who might get something out of this episode, we'd love it if you could share it with them. It's a really big way to help us keep doing what we're doing here at The Briefing. We're also on TikTok, Instagram and YouTube. Make sure you check us out there. Follow, like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt. We'll see you next time.